It was supposed to be a night dedicated to prayer and reflection, but for 34-year-old Stacy Thokozani, February 10, 2024 would become a night that would destroy lives and also leave the quiet community of Nkoba Village 14 in Gweru, Zimbabwe, in total shock. Stacy had left home that Saturday evening around 7 p.m. to attend an all-night prayer session in church. She entrusted the care of her two young children to her husband, 36-year-old Tavadzwa Emmanuel. Mr. Emmanuel, however, had other plans for the night, plans that would ultimately lead to devastating consequences. At about 10 p.m., while Stacy was still at the church, a neighbor noticed something unusual. Mr. Emmanuel had returned to their matrimonial home, but he wasn't alone. With him was 28-year-old Brightness Nancy, a woman who was later identified as his mistress. The neighbor, perhaps out of concern or a sense of obligation, picked up her phone and then initiated a call to inform Stacy of the situation. When she called Stacy, she was still deep in prayer at the church, but upon hearing the news, she didn't hesitate. Stacy left the prayer session immediately and rushed back home. Her mind at that time was probably boiling with serious anger and a strong feeling of betrayal. She may have had a clear mental picture of what was actually going down between her husband and his mistress in their matrimonial home. But what she had no idea about was the fact that the discovery she would make at home would initiate a very horrible chain of events that would change both her fate and that of her young children. When Stacy arrived home that night, she headed straight to the bedroom. On opening the door, she caught her husband and his mistress on her marital bed, completely undressed. The sight of her husband with another woman in the same space they shared as a family sent her into a blind fit of anger. Unable to control her emotions, Stacy rushed to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and then stormed back into the bedroom. Her initial target was Brightness, but her husband quickly intervened. He managed to take the knife away from her and then took it out of the bedroom. For a moment, it appeared as though the tension might have died down, but Stacy wasn't done. As Mr. Emmanuel stepped outside to dispose of the knife, Stacy ran back to the kitchen where she grabbed a second knife. Since it was just her and Brightness left inside the bedroom, Stacy initiated a second wave of attack that left Brightness with multiple stab wounds. The brutal attack forced Brightness to run out of the bedroom. Injured and desperate to escape, she managed to stagger out of the house and then climb over the wall surrounding the property. Sadly for her, the injuries she suffered from the deadly attack were too severe for her to escape with. Brightness collapsed just a short distance from Stacy's house and tragically passed away. The community members who saw her body on the street called the police to report the incident. The police made their way to the scene to carry out their investigation. Since the body was lying just a short distance from the couple's residence, it didn't take long for the police to figure it out. The detectives entered Stacy's residence for preliminary investigations. They recovered the knife used in the attack and also took Stacy into custody. Further examination showed that Brightness had been stabbed a total of 4 times and that she died due to excessive blood loss. Now, it is not known if this was a one-time incident or if there have been lingering cases of infidelity within their marriage. Judging from the way things played out, it is either that was the first time Stacy found out about her husband's infidelity, or she had known he had been doing so, but was just waiting for the day she would catch them red-handed. Something almost similar to Stacy's story happened in Calabar, Cross River State, Nigeria. It was a Sunday in September 2022 when Mrs. Claret Bassi, a respected lawyer and mother of 3, received a phone call from her friend informing her that she just sighted her husband, Mr. Bassi, Sunday, entering a shopping mall with his mistress, who was later identified as Latisha. Overcome with anger and betrayal, Mrs. Claret wasted no time. She quickly got into her car and drove to the mall. Upon arrival, she saw her husband leaving the mall and Letitia sitting beside him in the front seat. As soon as Mr. Bassey saw his wife approaching, he panicked. Without hesitation, he started his car and drove off at high speed, with Letitia still in the passenger seat. Mrs. Claret, who didn't want her husband to get away, decided to give him a hot chase. The more Mr. Bassey accelerated, the more his wife tried to catch up with him. It got to a point where Mr. Bassey decided to lose his wife by veering off the highway and into a quieter street. This forced Mrs. Claret to make a sharp U-turn, but in her desperation, she lost control of her car. The vehicle skidded off the road and crashed into a tree. The impact left her seriously injured and the car a mangled wreck. When Mr. Bassey glanced back through his rearview mirror after the crash, he realized the gravity of the situation, and immediately he dropped off Letitia and then made a U-turn, rushing back to the accident scene. As Mr. Bassey approached the wreckage, he found his wife badly injured and bleeding profusely. Overcome with guilt and regret, he reportedly broke down in tears, apologizing repeatedly to his wife as he tried to offer what little help he could. Mrs. Claret was rushed to a nearby hospital, but sadly, she succumbed to her injuries shortly after arrival. These two cases were quite tragic, and aside from the act of infidelity itself, a common factor among them is the presence of an informant. While it is natural to feel a surge of emotions after receiving such news, it is important to pause and carefully assess the situation before reacting. Acting impulsively can escalate things in unexpected and devastating ways, as we have seen in these cases. Sometimes, taking a moment to reflect can prevent a tragic chain of events from unfolding. Mr. Emmanuel's actions were quite disrespectful, not just to the wife, but to his two children who were also in the house when he brought home another woman. If the two kids had witnessed the fight between their mother and Brightness, especially when she was running out of the house, severely injured, they could end up living with the horrible memories of that night for a very long time. As for Brightness, being involved with a married man and stepping into their matrimonial home was a decision that placed her in a highly volatile situation. While no one deserves what happened to her, it is a tragic example of how certain choices can lead to unforeseen and devastating consequences. It is just so sad that things ended the way they did. Since infidelity is something that can happen to anyone, I would like to know how you would react in this kind of situation where someone calls to inform you about seeing your partner with someone else. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe to this channel for more true crime stories. Thank you for watching and stay safe.